You may not know it, but Gideons are not professional speakers. They come do this on their own. My dad is a Gideon. My mom was an auxiliary member. And, for years I've often harassed him about, well, why don't you guys just download things? So it's nice to see the download card because that's, obviously a way to do that. So, all right, well, the Gideons are risk takers. Here's what I want you to do. As these guys will be around after the service, ask them, hey, why are you guys called Gideons? Because if you ask, some of you guys, has anybody ever, not heard of Gideon? Does anybody not know the story of Gideon? Nobody's raising their hand. Well, of course, Pastor, we know the story of Gideon. To me, it's one of the funniest stories in the whole Old Testament. It's like the exact opposite of what you should do to win a battle is the story of Gideon. And it worked because they took a risk. They took a risk and trusted what God told them to do, even though God told them to do the things that absolutely made no sense, which is a perfect segue into the sermon today. Because we've been talking about how we treat one another. We've kind of encased this whole series about going on a road trip. Because we're all wanting to hit the road running, head out on the highway, get your motor running. We are born to be wild. We are ready to go and hit the road. We are tired of sitting in the house, and we're ready to go. So this road trip, we've been talking about, there are some of the commands that are about the way that you treat people while you're on the road trip, and the others about the attitudes that you have there. And so Jesus and Paul and all the different writers and teachers in the Old Testament tell us about the way we should treat one another and all these attitudes. So today I wanted to introduce, and this is our final one, by the way. Some of you guys are saying, Pastor, don't you have anything else to talk to us about than the way we treat one another? Well, it's a big topic, right? Because everywhere you go, there are people. And for some of you, you go, yay, people. And others, you're like, I've had enough people. Right? My daughter and I are both introverts. My wife and my son are extroverts. Like, if there was a scale of introvert here, extrovert here, my daughter Hannah is over here. I'm about here. My wife here. My son here. So, my daughter is just like, sometimes she just goes, Dad, I'm tired of peopling today. I'm not peopling anymore. Now, I want to talk to you about risk takers. And you'll see why here in a minute. Everybody loves a risk taker. As long as it's not you who's doing it, right? We like to watch other people take risk. Has anybody ever watched I have a digital antenna, so I don't know exactly what it is on everybody's cable system. But on channel 15, there's all of a sudden you're with me. All weekend long are these real quick blip videos of idiots doing stupid stuff to be cool on video, and they always wreck and crash, and it's so much fun because it's not me doing it. It makes me feel really smart. Right? It's like, boy, man, I have a bigger IQ than that, dude. Well, we love to see risk. We love to see people who are risking the raw. By the way, I ordered new glasses. I put my old ones in my pocket and then ran them through the wash. So I'm really sick of looking through these and taking them on and off. So there's new ones coming. Thank you, Costco. All right, so we're going to talk about risk. You guys are just... every week, the girls are over there just like, what is he talking about? Okay. Anyway, what's coming up here in about, 30, 35 days? The Olympics, right? Love the Olympics. I could watch anything in the Olympics because people are working for 4, 8, 12, their entire life for this one race or this one event. I love the Olympics. Everybody loves when the time comes down and the rubber meets the road and we're all trying to, there's one chance. You know, if you're a NASCAR fan, you want to watch Daytona because that's the big one, right? If you're a baseball fan, World Series, right? I don't even, a lot of these sports, I'm not a big sports person. I like certain sports, but for the most part, I don't like to sit and watch. Like, does anybody here watch golf on television? Oh, man, I'd rather watch paint dry than watch golf on television. That's the most, all right, but certain things, like even if I'm not a huge baseball fan, but I like to watch the World Series because, you know, everything's kind of on the line and it really counts. See if you remember this with me. In 1988, I watched this game. This is one of my favorite sports moments. 1988 World Series. It's the Oakland A's and the Dodgers. Any baseball fans? Anybody? A few of you? Okay. Oakland A's were playing the LA Dodgers. In the first game of the World Series, Oakland's ahead 4-3. Okay. It was the bottom of the ninth inning, 2 outs with the tying run on first base. Okay. So they have to get a base hit. Right? Tommy Lasorda makes one of the riskiest calls of all time. He uses Kirk Gibson as a pinch hitter. Gibson had a great year, but he was injured. He had 2 bad legs. He could hardly walk. He had a bad left hamstring and a swollen right knee. Gibson couldn't run to first base. He had to hit a homer or he'd have been thrown out at first. He could hardly move. The count went to 3 balls, 2 strikes. Okay, and when you're a kid, every kid does this. You know, you're playing wiffle ball in the backyard. You're dreaming of this moment. The tension is high. Me and my roommate, well, 4 of us living in an apartment together. 2 of people were asleep, and the other 2 of us were in the living room. And we stayed up late to watch this. Here it comes, 3-2. Outside pitch, boom. Over the right field wall. Home run to win. We screamed and ran around the apartment for a half hour, man. It was like, yeah! You can't dream of that. That's the kind of thing you live for, man. The risk was there. You swung. It paid off. Everybody loves those stories. We love the big risk. Now, what's the old saying? Springtime, a young man's heart turns to love. Let's talk about love. What's love got to do with it, they say? Well, we love to see romantics lay their hearts on the line and risk their relationship by publicly declaring their love and asking their sweetheart to marry them. Huh? We like those. We like this. The more daring, the better the suspense. Nothing will gather a crowd faster than somebody asking somebody to marry them, right? You ever watch? You ever have been witness to this? I've been involved in multiple proposals, not my own. But I helped lots of friends who set all this up. Well, that's a whole other story. But anyway, when I asked my girlfriend to marry me, I had a plan. It was a big plan. Let me tell you about it. That was my girlfriend. So I'm cheating by letting you know how this turns out. But I had a plan. My roommate, for some reason, had bought a white Cadillac. I don't know why a single man bought a white Cadillac. It was an old man car, but he had it. And it looked like a limousine. So I said, well, that looks like a limousine. I think I will hire you as my chauffeur, and you will escort me and my hopefully future bride down on our date. And so he's like, yeah, I'll help out. So we had a plan. I had it on a paper, right down to the minute. Boom, boom. This night had to work and work right. So we pick her up in Mount Joy. We drive all the way down to the Inner Harbor, down in Baltimore, going to a nice restaurant. Now, I knew the reservation was for 7:30, but I told her that it was a delay. We got there a little early, so we pretended that we had a little extra time, but it was right on schedule. And we were there in those gift shops. I don't know if they're still there now or not. It's been ages since I've been to the Inner Harbor. But so we went there, and I knew she kind of liked certain things, and I knew that she kind of liked like snow globes and kind of collected little things like that. So I knew that this shop was there. So I caught her eyeballing this very ridiculously expensive snow globe. And there's a music. Well, it wasn't a box, but you wind it up on the bottom. It makes the noise, it makes a little song. And it's so cute. It's about that big. It was ridiculously expensive, but I didn't care. So I pretended. I just said, well, that would be nice. Well, maybe someday you'll have one of those. So at precisely 6:45, I met my roommate in the bathroom. Two well-dressed fellas exchanging money in the bathroom. Probably a few people were ready to call the cops, but they didn't know what was going on. I told them exactly which one. So we go up to the restaurant. It was one of those high up. By the way, it's Black Friday, so everything is decorated for Christmas, and it's up at this really nice window view of the harbor, about 8 stories up. It was a nice restaurant. They didn't even have a drive-through. One of the few places I've ever been that does not have a drive-through or has special sauce or anything like that. And so my roommate goes and buys a music box, snow globe thing, has it wrapped up, and in the middle of the meal, the waiter delivers this snow globe. I have a delivery here for Miss Beth Hess. And she's wondering what's going on, and she opens it up, and it was the thing she had just been looking at about a half hour before. Oh, the look in her eye. Holy cow, I got a smile out of some of the fellas. Now I know the topic to bring up. All right. Feel free to use any of this, steal any of it, okay? So, things were going well. It was supposed to be, I had written a song, and what was supposed to happen was go on a carriage ride, but it was raining outside all of a sudden, sprinkling down enough that they canceled it, but it was still not bad. They canceled it. We improvised. So my roommate, on time, had my guitar as we go down there at the Inner Harbor, and if you've ever been there, you know that the USS Constellation is there. Right? So right out on the pier there, my guitar is delivered to me, and I sing a risky song. Where I'm singing this song that I had written for her. And in the middle of this song, I am laying it on thick, baby. I am swinging for the fences like Kirk Gibson. I am giving it everything I got. Teary-eyed. Tissues ringing, and a cop comes up right in the middle of the song and interrupts me. I'm like, oh my goodness, you supposed to have a permit to be out here singing on the permit? I don't know what's going on. He goes, young man, you have a lot of nerve. I'm like, please, Lord, I don't want to be arrested in the middle of my engagement. He goes, young man, you've got a lot of nerve singing to this beautiful woman out here without a dozen roses. My roommate had improvised. I look around the corner of the building, and there are 3 cops and my roommate going. I finished the song. My wife, teary-eyed, says yes, and she's been a sucker ever since. Right? So it worked. Everybody loved it. People love risk takers. Now, the downside of that is you better make sure that she's going to say yes, fellas. You don't want to be doing something in front of people and then it goes bad. We've seen those. So be sure before you really go for that one. Now, why did I bring this up? Well, it's a good story and it's a great story because it worked out. and you say, well, I've risked before and things sometimes don't work out. Well, I understand that. The world loves risk takers. And nobody really cares if you have a dream. If you have a dream and you never do anything about the dream, then nobody really cares about your dream. They want to see you put some action to the dream. And at least try. At least try something, right? Unless you're willing to go all the way to fulfill that dream, to give your life to see it happen, that's when we start caring about it. Now, that's a story. If that's Jesus, you go ahead and answer it. Otherwise, put it on silent, please. Jesus had a dream. You realize that? And that dream was that his followers would love one another the way that he loved them. That's what he sat around and dreamed about. And so, on the most important night of his entire ministry, the night before the crucifixion, he swung for the fence. He went for the home run. And I want you to read with me John chapter 13. John chapter 13, 1. We're going to look in verse 1. If you don't have a Bible, I happen to know some fellows that might give you one. But anyway. Or at least they have a little scan code and you can download one. Actually, it's real easy to download a Bible. John chapter 13. We're going to look in verse 1. It was just before the Passover feast. Jesus knew that the time had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own, who were in the world, he now showed them the full extent of his love. The evening meal was being served, and the devil had already prompted Judas Iscariot, son of Simon, to betray Jesus. Okay? You getting the tension here? The most dramatic evening in history is starting right now. This is the climax. Jesus is on his way to the cross, and he knows it. For Jesus, this is the bottom of the ninth inning. The tension could be no higher for him, as he knows this will be his last night before he's crucified. But before he goes, he wants to take care of some unfinished business. There are some things Jesus is going to go over one more time to make sure his friends understand. He starts with an absolutely unheard of gesture. Instead of playing it safe, he swings for the fence. Ready? Verse 3. Verse 3. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So, he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, wrapped a towel around his waist, and after that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. Now, that may strike you as weird. It struck everybody in the room as weird. This was a weird thing. It sounds like something strange. It's a little hard for us to understand because we do not have the same custom that was in place during those years. Shoes during this time in the Roman Empire had quite a variety. They were diverse in their design, but no matter what the design, part of the foot was exposed. And they didn't have buses. They didn't have, mass transit. They didn't have cars. Only a few people would have had access to chariots. So everybody walked everywhere. And so when you came to eat, this was before the great invention of the dining room table. And so what you would do is if I invited you all over to my house, we would have an area set up with some pillows, and we would recline together in a circle, kind of like this. And we'd be up on one elbow, and you kind of sit there like you were, kind of like you're reclining in front of the TV watching something. Only the thing is, you're in a circle. And so, if Paul was over at my house, his head would be over there, but his feet would be right here. I don't want to eat next to Paul's feet. But that was the custom. So I better make sure that Paul's feet are clean. Right? So what would happen is it was commonplace to have, if you were a well-to-do person, you would have somebody that you would have there to do this for your guest. That was the slave's job, the lowest of the slave's job. All the slaves argued, I don't want to do that, you do it. And so the youngest or probably the lowest ranking slave would have been their job to do it. They were in a rented room. Nobody was there hosting. So this got neglected in this Passover meal. So Jesus does something that flips everybody out. He strips down out of his outer clothes down to his inner clothing. Now, this is just a little side note. Okay, some of you guys are really into history. I did a little research on this. This is really why it really drives this home. There were only 2 articles of clothing when it was Jesus' time. There was an innie and an outie. There was an in one, which is a short, like big T-shirt. Just imagine a big T-shirt that would probably come down to about here. Then you got an overgarment, and you've seen that. This is what it looks like in all the Christmas plays. Looks like a big wraparound thing. So Jesus takes all that off, wearing a short T-shirt. That's it. Could you imagine? And he starts going around and he's washing people's feet. Now this is awkward. The head of the feast does not do this. Could you imagine if you invite a special dignitary, a very important person? Maybe your favorite president comes over for dinner and you find him stripped down to his underwear scrubbing your toilet because you forgot to? Awkward! Can you imagine? Sorry, Steve, did I put an image in your head there? Right? This is weird. Mr. Biden, could you please get out of my bathroom? I'll take care of that. And this is what the reaction was. Now, look in verse 6. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? And Jesus replied, you do not realize what I am doing, but later you will understand. Peter said, No, you shall never wash my feet. Peter's the only one who is recorded for his reaction. And I like Peter because Peter and I identify with Peter a bunch. Peter is a screwball. He was always saying the wrong thing. Perfect for me, right? Peter's the only one who recorded. And, no, Jesus, no. Let me do that. I grew up in Huntington, West Virginia. Appalachian culture. Nobody is going to do something for me if I can do it myself. Okay? You grew up in Virginia. What happens when you go to a restaurant with a bunch of Virginians and the check comes on the table? It's going to be a fight, isn't there? Going to be a fight because I'll pay for this. Oh, no, you won't. Oh, yes, you will. No, you won't. There's going to be a big argument when it comes time for the check because nobody wants to owe anybody anything. You want to be seen as standing on your own 2 feet because everybody thinks we're a bunch of dumb hillbillies, which is wrong. Believe it or not, we have cities in West Virginia. I grew up in a church of 1,000 people. We have, I won't get on that high horse, but we don't like to be seen as somebody who is beholden to anybody. So everybody runs to grab that check. Now, we're particularly interested in standing on our own 2 feet. And I can just imagine if Jesus would have tried to wash my family's feet. My grandma would have wrestled Jesus for that washcloth. Said, "No, give me that." I can just see my granny doing it right now. "Come on, Jesus, cut it out. Don't be ridiculous. I'll do that. I'll take care of it." Jesus answered Peter, and he said, "Peter, if I don't wash you, you're not going to have any part of me." Could you imagine how tense this is? And Peter, he looks at him. He probably smiled. He said, "Well, if that's okay, then just give me a whole bath." That's what he said. "Well, why don't you just wash all of me?" He said, "Well, if that's what it means, I'll take everything you got." And I bet everybody just cracked up. When Peter realizes that Jesus is not giving up, he relents. He had seen it in his teacher's eye before. Jesus had a stubborn streak, and this was one of those times. And he looks at him, and he realizes Jesus is up to something. Jesus was always up to something with the disciples. He always was. He was up to something. He didn't have to do some of the things that he did. He just did it to mess with them, I think. Why did he send them out on a boat by themselves, knowing that there's going to be a storm out there, and he catches up with them later walking on the water? I think he was laughing his head off. And then he was going to teach them to trust, right? I know if I could control the waves, that's what I'd do to my friends. But anyway. When Jesus answered, he said, "A person who has had a bath needs only to wash his feet. His whole body is clean. And you are clean, though not every one of you." For he knew who was going to betray him, and that was why he had said, "Not every one of you is clean." The astonishing part of this story to me is not that Jesus showed humility by demonstrating this love to his friends. The part that blows me away is that he had just washed the feet of the man who was selling him out to the authorities. Judas Iscariot was there, and Jesus had just washed his feet. Can you imagine? You ever put yourself in somebody's place? What it would have been like for Jesus to know this friend had already betrayed him? And he goes ahead and washes his feet? I don't know if I could have done that. And Jesus does. When he finished washing their feet, verse 12, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. He said, "Do you understand what I have done for you? You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you should also wash one another's feet. I have set you as an example that you should do as I have done for you." Oh, man. Now everybody's really flipping out. They must have been relieved when Jesus put his clothes back on and resumed his role as the honored guest, but that didn't last long. Jesus told them they should continue to do this for one another. It's bad enough that Jesus said they had to allow Jesus to wash their feet, but now they're supposed to wash one another's feet? I mean, not right now, but in the future, because the feet were already clean. They must have been confused. Lord, why would we do such a thing? That purpose would have been, what purpose? Why? Why? Why would we do this? They must have been really confused. Jesus said, "I tell you the truth. No servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you'll be blessed if you do them." I love it when Jesus says a servant is not greater than his master. He said, "What are you guys?" He said, "If I can do this, who made you Lord and King? Who made you in charge that you are too good to do this if I'm doing it? If I'm a servant And you're my servant, so aren't you a servant's servant? You're not Mr. High and Mighty. So why are you complaining about this? In fact, you're going to be blessed if you do this. If anybody had the idea that they were above any activity, Jesus squashed it like an unwanted bug at a girl's slumber party. You're just no better. He said, you're no better than me, and if I can do it, you can do it too. But I bet he had a smile on his face. He said, now that you know these things, you'll be blessed by God if you do them. And blessed by God is more than just being happy. You realize that? I'm really tired of overuse of the word blessed. You know, they're all over T-shirts and plaques and license plates and bumper stickers. Most people think it just means happy. Happiness comes and happiness goes. Being blessed, it implies being a part of the kingdom of God. It's bigger than just being happy. You're part of the kingdom of God. You have hope. You have a purpose. Being blessed is an enviable situation that people look and say, man, I wish I was like that. Wish I had that set up. He's blessed by God. That's the way the world should be looking at us. But instead they look at Christians and go, man, I'm sure glad they're not even in my neighborhood. You know why? Because we've stopped washing each other's feet. We fight and fuss. We stopped taking risk a long time ago. Some of you guys would never, ever sign up to go and stand out in front of a school and hand out a New Testament. What are you, crazy? What if they say no? You ever had anybody say no? Did you die? No, he didn't die. He's still alive. He's still okay. I'm not saying that's the only way to do it, but that's one way you could do it. The church stopped taking risk. It's easy to tell. Look around. Some of you guys haven't taken a risk by showing anybody anything other than accepting a bulletin, coming in, filling the pew, and then you walk out and you wonder why church sucks. You wonder why it's terrible. You wonder why your heart hurts. You wonder why you're lonely. You wonder why God doesn't seem real to you. You know why? Because you stopped taking risk. You stopped. Or you're scared to do anything. Now, this is a loving kick in the butt. But, friends, there's a reason that you stopped reaching Marietta a long time ago. It's because you stopped taking risk in the community. You're like, well, I don't want to live in that neighborhood. I want to live in a nice neighborhood. Well, why do you think people in that neighborhood don't pay attention to you? Because you've said you're too good for them. I wouldn't want to listen to you either. How about we take a ride? We go down there and look around and see if there's anybody we'd at least talk to. You stop taking risk and you become irrelevant. In fact, you become a joke. I love you, and I'm telling you this. This is the way that churches become irrelevant. We stop taking risk. You say, well, we don't have that much money in our church. We don't have a church like that big church that fella goes to. Look at him, man. He goes to that fancy church. We don't have the big church. We're little grasshoppers out here, and they're giants out there. Please. We can do things that church can't do. By the way, he goes to the big church across the street. I'm not saying anything bad about that church. They're a great church. They have a nice sign out there, and I'm sure it's real pretty, even I'm sure it's a nice place. And I'm sure they do all kinds of nice things. But they can't do the things that you can do, and you can't do the things they can do. Right? Am I right? He knows. Man, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be stepping on anybody's toes. That wasn't my intent today. But Jesus said, a servant is no greater than his master. The world is full of seminars, books, self-motivated speakers who will tell you that the way to get ahead in this world is to work harder, buy their book, get referrals, buy their book again and give it to a friend. And to them, the keys to success in life is to get more money, more power, more influence. Jesus' key to success is the opposite. It's the opposite. He said, serve people. Don't get more people to serve you. Don't think too much of yourself. Get off your high horse. Be active in looking for opportunities to meet people's needs. The command to wash one another's feet is a literal one, and it is a figurative one. Yeah, I'm glad that this church, I've been here, 10 weeks, 11 weeks. Do we do foot washing here? We do? Okay, good. I didn't grow up in a church that did foot washing. In fact, that was there were a few churches out in the country that did that. I always thought it was weird. And I'd never part of that until I became a pastor, and I was in the Brethren in Christ Church, and the first time we went, we had that, and I was shocked. At the first time we did it, I was blown away by the intimacy, the serving, the sharing that went on between the men in the room, that they encouraged one another. It was their custom to love on one another, give each other hugs. It was like weird. We actually acted like we liked each other and really were rooting for each other. Imagine that in a church. People were actually being real with each other instead of lying when they say, "How you doing, brother?" "Well, I'm doing fine." "Are you doing fine?" "I'm fine. I'm fine." "We're fine. We're fine." Right? Women came out of the room crying because they were in there hugging and loving on each other. I love this custom. Jesus said, this is a real easy way for you to have your attitude checked. But it's also not just a literal thing, but it's also figurative. It's something that is a way to kind of position yourself. You don't want to be walking in the grocery store, grabbing somebody's shoes off their feet and say, "I'm washing your feet, brother." They might call the cops on you. Probably rightfully so. But you can serve people. Comes in the context of a relationship. In our modern world, we're quick to depersonalize people. You realize that? We often see a waitress or a bus driver or a cashier, and we don't treat them as people. We just treat them as not even there. They're invisible, right? Carrie, you ever have that happen to you? Where people just don't even acknowledge that you're a person? They don't even look at you? Okay? You're bagging their groceries for you and they just kind of don't even catch eye contact with you? The literal command to wash one another's feet is a practice that reminds us of the intimacy of the family of God. We have to treat other people as if they're important as well. That they're not faceless drones that meet our needs. How many times had slaves washed the disciples' feet and they probably never even noticed who they were or said thank you or left them a tip? Okay. How many people have ever waited tables or waitresses? Okay. I don't know about you, but what was the worst day? I can tell you the worst day on when we were working. Sunday, right after church, when the Christians come. Nobody's tighter than a bunch of Christians at a restaurant. Well, we have to be good stewards of our money. Yeah. Get in your $50,000 pickup and go on home. And this person here can't pay the light bill. Don't be a cheapskate, especially if you're wearing your suit and tie or you're going out after church and it's obvious you're a bunch of Christians. Please. Rolling up in your bumper sticker cover. I love Jesus. The rest of you, I could do without. That's probably what it means. When Jesus washed people's feet, he reminds us that we are to treat others with respect and with honor, and to treat them as people, no matter their wealth or their job. And as a church, we're to wash each other's feet. Social boundaries disappear when we do this. You realize that? We are equal. We are one. There are no bosses, no servants. We're brothers. We're sisters. We are not Republicans, Democrats. We are not vaccinators or non-vaccinators. We are not Ford, Chevy. Right? We become one. That's what the church is called to do. Even though you have opinions, even though you're scared, and trust me, I know there's nothing worse in the world than being scared to hang out with people. There have been times, and I'll be honest with you, there have been times where I have hid in the bathroom when I was at church because I didn't want to talk to people. Not this church, but there have been plenty of churches where I've done that. You know why? Because I got kicked in the teeth by those people. I got hurt by those people. They said nasty things about me. They don't like the way I do this, or they don't like the way I do that. I could hear them talking about it. You know, it's real common to have roast preacher for Sunday dinner. Eventually, you know, you kick a dog long enough, the dog hides from you. And that's what I was doing. I just couldn't take it anymore. Guys, I know there's probably somebody here who hurt you before. If it's any in a group this size, it's bound to have happened. You don't realize that somebody said something about you, or you said something and you didn't realize that that joke wasn't funny to that person. Isn't it time to stop it? Isn't it time to stop being afraid? Go talk to the person. Time to kiss and make up. Time to hug each other. Time to wash one another's feet. It's obvious. We're holding back. It's obvious. You know? It's like when, like when a husband and wife have an argument on the way to church. Yeah, I know none of this has ever happened to you. But if a husband and wife have an argument on the way to church, it's easy to tell. It's easy to tell because, like, see, Chuck is really close right now to Twyla, right? Chances are they did not have an argument, okay? Now, I'm not saying anybody else that isn't sitting like that, but I can tell Twyla's not kicking off any negative vibes right now, or else she would have elbowed Chuck, told him to get the heck away from her, right? It's happened to married couples before, right? And you could tell, you can try to hide it like everything's fine, but everybody knows you had an argument on the way to church. The figurative command to wash one another's feet is to serve one another in ways that don't make sense to the outside world. Invite somebody over to dinner that can't pay you back. Well, that's weird. That's not a very Lancaster County sort of thing to do. How about sell something that means something to you in order to finance a gesture? Or don't draw attention to yourself. How about putting the other person into the center of the stage instead of you? Tony Campolo. He's a pastor and a teacher at Eastern College, and he tells this story about a student that came to tell him some good news. Okay? He just graduated. He said, Dr. Campolo, I just got a job teaching at a very prestigious school. I beat out 200 other applicants to get the job. Isn't that great? And Campolo looked at him. He said, wait a minute. You're telling me that if you didn't get the job, there was a line of 200 other people that would do the job. He said, yeah, I won out. And Campolo just looks at him. He said, no, it's not great. He said, shame on you. He said, the city of Philadelphia can't get enough teachers to come. There's empty classrooms throughout the city. Why not go and do something no one else is willing to do instead of teaching at a prestigious school? Your teaching ability wasn't given to you for your own benefit. Go and serve others. Yikes. But he spoke the truth, you know. The world loves risk takers. I'm just asking you, isn't it about time to stop holding back? Shouldn't you swing for the fence once in your life? Or risk it all for the sake of Jesus who gave us his all? Love others because God loves us. A servant is no greater than his master. Go and wash one another's feet. Let's pray. Jesus, I got to admit, I love your style. I don't get it. And I'm sure I would have been as messed up and as unnerved as the rest of the disciples who were there. And I'm not very good at risk-taking. I'm very good at covering myself. I'm very good at being cautious. And I'm sorry about that. Father, I pray you'd give us courage to at least risk one time. Just one time. For those of us who are used to playing it safe and not reaching out to people or not doing anything that isn't, a guaranteed result. I pray you teach us to risk. I'd rather risk and lose than not risk at all, I guess. At least most days I'm like that. Help me when I'm weak. Father, if there's anybody here who doesn't know you, if they don't know you, I pray that they would look at you, Jesus, and just start there. Start with Jesus. The very best look at who God's character is all about. So as we ask for all of us to take a step in the direction that's closer together and closer to you. As we draw closer to you, we draw closer together. It's impossible to step closer to God and further away from our brothers and sisters. We pray all this in your name, and amen.